Welcome to Behind the Smiles podcast, where we go beyond the surface while talking to labs and DSOs about everything your highlight reel doesn't show. If you're into stories, strategy, and a little bit of startup chaos, this one is for you.
Very good morning. Welcome, Matt. Thank you so much for joining the second podcast of the series Behind the Smiles. In today's topic, we are going to be discussing labs, their thoughts, and some of their own reactions in terms of what they've said when we have spoken to them. And so basically today's session is all about having a look at some of the things that they have told us based on our calls and what our reactions would be. So this is actually what labs would say when dentists aren't listening. Let's get started.
It's going to be interesting.
Absolutely. So just before we get started, Matt, a little bit of context that I wanted to paint for everyone. So the scale of this session is that we have analyzed over 1,000 outbound calls that we have made to different labs. They're all real ones. None of them are AI generated. And we've spoken to about 300 plus unique labs across different sizes, different cities, different towns. And it ranges from solo technicians working off their garages, husband and wife operations where they're doing about 300, 400 cases a month, 10-person teams in London with a 7-figure turnover, and a 50-year-old family business that is still half on analog. Very surprising. They've been tested through times. And then we have VC-backed startups who are also giving us feedback where they've not been using any LMS and they've grown to over 150 dentist clients. And then we also have highly sophisticated operations, which are enterprise or really big labs who have custom built their own tech stacks. So this is the lay of the land, Matt.
Yeah, that stack paints a pretty typical picture of the UK market, the dental lab market. It's a broad and wide range. Absolutely.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, what each of these guys have said today. So, we've basically, Matt, broken this down into 10 themes. And so we're going to be looking at 10 themes across the session. So let's get started with our first theme. First one, the portal juggle. How many tabs do you have open right now? Was actually one of the questions that went to the labs. The first one was Medit, iTero, 3Shape, DS Core, Shining 3D. I think we all know how many different scanner portals exist. But the first comment that we got back from a lab was, we're monitoring Medit, iTero, 3Shape, etc. And half the time the notifications don't come through. We only find out a case was sent when practice rings 2 weeks later asking where the crown is. And this came from a mid-size UK lab.
Yeah, wow. That is so typical, right? I'm guessing because there are so many different intricacies of, like, someone might have logged out on one system and or they logged into another one, so someone doesn't receive it on that system. And I know we've talked about this before, but the more we're trying to make things slicker and have these different admin teams and so on, that's when because we're putting humans into this system, that's when things go wrong.
Absolutely.
And Mark's off this week, so he's not logged in, and someone's forgotten his password. That's so typical.
That's a very classic case. And I think one of the other things that I've commonly heard, Matt, is also the fact that because labs tend to share emails, and so say, for example, if they've connected to about 10 different scanners, they share the same email ID for all 10 scanners so that there's one shared email ID that's getting all these notifications. What sometimes can also happen is that a person, actually it's because it's shared among the team as well, they're clicking on a notification, they're looking at it, they just get dragged on to something else in between, and they're just forgotten.
Yeah, and that's typical, I think. As a modern lab, you are juggling so many different things. It's so easy to get distracted. Something pings up. I did it. You sent me a message a few minutes ago saying 5 minutes, and something else cropped up on my phone, and here it is. It's not 5 minutes. It's 8 minutes, and I'm trying to find a login. So yeah, it's so easy to do.
Absolutely. Fantastic. So that's about portal juggle, which I think is a very, very common instance that happens in the industry. So that probably came up as theme 1. Let's look at theme 2. 7 out of 10 cases are incomplete. The scan is fine. The information around isn't. So
Yeah.
this 7 out of 10 times something is missing: return date, shade, material type. You're going back and forth on every other case before it ever gets to production. And the second one is actually, my wife is tearing her hair out every single day. It's the same thing: shade missing, patient name wrong, crown not marked on the scan. And I'm sure that they're probably having to call these dentists and getting information from them.
Yeah. Oh my word. Do you know that's probably an underestimation? 7 out of 10 as well.
Is it? Okay.
But probably is. Again, and through no fault of the dentist, sometimes, it's dentist has done something. He's probably told the nurse to pass this message on, and again, it's just not worked properly because one scanning system's got a different way of sharing information to another lab. Yeah, so it's so typical. Again, adding in so many inefficiencies in a system that intraoral scans are amazing. They prevent so many remakes and so on. But that is so typical, so typical. And the wife pulling her hair out. Yeah, you want a happy wife. You don't want to be a
No. So the lab is a mayhem.
Absolutely.
Great. I think the other probably worthy point over here is I have seen a bit of a difference. I see that especially with orthodontic work, there seems to be pretty straightforward. Like they tell you, what type of retainer they want, and then they send you the scan. So there's very little back and forth that happens, especially when you consider it from a volume perspective with ortho work that I've come across. But I commonly see this with a bridge and a crown and an implant and everything else that is a non-ortho related work, where this stat came up as a massive one.
There's probably an exception to that one, Vikas. I'll add in aligner cases, because the lack of information you get sometimes is when I used to help teach orthodontics to general dentists, and typical thing is Hollywood smile, please, and like, what does that even mean? The teeth are like, and we want a Hollywood smile. So the amount of information the conversations have to go back and forth. So that is probably an exception to the rule in orthodontics. Yeah, you're right. Typically it's an upper Essex retainer, please, or a lower upper and lower set of retainers. So that, yeah. But the aligner side of business, that's a whole different ball game. And I would say probably then we're in the realms of closer to 10 out of 10 cases. You need to go back for some further investigations.
Yeah, because I presume there's also a lot of, especially because our first product is an ortho workflow product, we see a lot of these prescriptions being heavy as well. Like there's so many different little things that they have to fill out. So yeah, it is a massive one. Cool. Let's go to the next one then. I almost have to employ an extra person. This is the hidden headcount that nobody talks about. I feel like I have to employ an extra person when I shouldn't need to, just to deal with this sort of stuff. Admin is dead money. I'm paying for it in time, but it never shows up anywhere on a balance sheet.
Oh, that's really interesting. And I can see in smaller labs where the mindset will be that the lab technician is the be all and end all. And when we set up our lab, it was very much admin specific. We made sure that technicians could do technician jobs, and the booking in was done by admin people, so that the technicians can actually physically do the work that they're trained to do. And to give you an example, the way we ran our lab, it's about 50-50. There's probably as many admin people as there are technicians. And that's not getting, at the minute, that's not getting any less. So I get that. I totally get that. And I think what we should see is that, admin's not dead money. If you get that right, it's actually going to earn you money, because it means that the technician can focus then on the work that's done.
Mm-hmm.
What we really want to see going further forward is some automation added into this stuff, so that it doesn't become even heavier with admin, which is where I think we're at the minute. So that's where perhaps some of these comments come, where we've got efficiencies at the lab end, but to get that work started, there's massive inefficiencies. So I get that totally. Yeah. I'm surprised it's only saying employ one extra person.
Yeah.
We've got a whole team.
Yeah. And I think if you do happen to look at it, yes, with automations and everything in place, a lot of these things would get resolved. But again, there's so many things to choose from, and it's important to know where the actual bottleneck is. But Matt, from your own experience on hiring admins, not just because of the inefficiency, right, but like also to look at it from another perspective, which is, now I have an admin, how do I make how do I make them the best resource possible for the company? And so how do you turn the tide from, I'm having to employ this person for all these inefficiencies, versus pulling them towards, get this admin to give them a great customer experience, let the customer feel that they're being taken care of?
Yeah, that's exactly it. If you can free up someone from doing all that, where you can automate so much of that stuff, and the more you can automate some of that stuff, the less likely things are to go wrong, because you're not putting different things together by a human. And then they can give the dentist the best customer service ever, whether it's just making sure that the appointment date's right, making sure that it arrives on time, so they're getting the best courier service or the best delivery service, or making sure that accounts are up to date and so on. Making sure that the materials are ordered on time so that the job arrives on time, that kind of thing. So absolutely, you've hit the nail on the head there. Get rid of some of the inefficiencies, give a better customer experience. Definitely, yeah.
Fantastic. Cool. So the next theme is the communication spaghetti. What exactly did that conversation? Where exactly did that conversation happen? This is a classic, isn't it? 5-6 emails going back, then a WhatsApp, then a Messenger, then Slack, then a file here. Emails are just an utter waste of time. No value to learn anything. Scans come through the portal, photos come through WeTransfer, notes come through email, and then someone rings to tell you that there's been a change.
Yeah, and then that change doesn't get passed on to the right person, or someone forgets to document it. Oh yeah, that is just so typical. It's part and parcel of the world. Is it the link between clinic and lab at the minute? There's no clear defined pathway at the minute. So many different operating systems, so many different scanners, so many different and labs expectations of the type of work that comes in. The communication spaghetti is a really good way of saying it. Chuck a few meatballs in there as well, and you've got a great meal, but it might not look the best. But yeah, that is so typical. Yeah, absolutely. Just trying to piece it all together. And then something else comes up. WhatsApp. I must admit, WhatsApp was a massively great introduction, because videos were allowed to be sent. Videos could be sent. Pictures could be sent. Voice messages could be sent. So that did kind of shrink the funnel, if you like, a little bit. But still, you get an email through, then you get a text message, and someone, it's a mess. Yeah. Absolutely. So I get that. Yeah.
I think this is something that I think we also discussed when we were in Birmingham running the lab.
Yeah.
And a lot of different people said, this is like an absolute mess that nobody's looking to solve, which is actually one of the reasons why we started looking at this direction within Smile Genius. And one of the things that I happened to learn along the way when we were doing these calls and we were like trying to understand where this is like stemming from, like one potential source is also the fact that a lot of different scanner companies have their pricing models built in such a way that, say, if they're trying to sell that to a dentist, the dentist, from sort of a free tier or like the basic tier that they happen to sell, only comes with a specific amount of storage. So if the dentist wants to share anything more than anything that crosses that storage volume, they won't be able to retain the older cases that happened at the very beginning, or B, they'll have to start paying up, because if they want to start storing more. And so a couple of labs actually did say that all of this is happening because the dentists don't want to pay money, which is fair in sometimes, because it's extra money for the reasons that they do not understand how it affects down the line. And the lab is like, yeah, and that's why we have to wait on WeTransfer for some of these files to come through. And then that's what's causing that cascading effect of somebody else taking that operational burden down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, that's so typical, right? We heard that in that room at Birmingham. It's so typical. And it ultimately ends up being, it does typically be, it's the lab that has to kind of front that cost, should I say.
Yeah.
So typical, yeah, really is. I remember back to the days of Dropbox.
Yeah.
When that was the only one really, and Dropbox was, I don't know, you got something like I think you got 1 gigabyte free, and we were sending STL files, and suddenly that 1 gigabyte very quickly went, and then we started to pay them for extra storage, and then you get some dentists go, I work in a corporate, and they won't allow us to use Dropbox, so you start having to look for other things, and that's when this communication spaghetti just got a lot worse.
Very interesting. And maybe this is a question that I'd like to openly ask, right? Which is more so for me to understand. So, yes, email, WhatsApp, WeTransfer, and whatever tools they're using to kind of like send communications through writing and through files absolutely makes sense. But what about calls, Matt? Because I think one of the things that often gets missed is, all right, I don't know, does this actually happen wherein dentist calls, they're probably in the middle of a very busy day, they're giving you a call, and then they're probably forgetting about it just because they're having a very busy day. The other side, the lab is taking down notes, obviously, because labs always tend to do that. Do you ever get calls back from the dentist saying, what, I don't remember actually saying that, I actually need something else for this case that needs to be happen? Or where does the source of truth essentially reside in this conversation? Because then, are you at the mercy of what the dentist is saying, or do you say that, nope, these are the notes that we took down, so this is why it happened to be this way?
Yeah, did you know that I've got examples of that happening. Yeah, absolutely. Although we never discussed that. Well, we did. We wrote some notes, and obviously now there's this tech there now that we can start recording calls, and we can log calls a lot better with AI. But then again, you've got to start talking to dentists saying, we're going to record this call, and it's just not very nice. It's not a very nice kind of relationship to have. That it's kind of working a bit defensive. But definitely had that, yeah. And as good as your notes are, it's then it's your word against it's your word against theirs, and the customer's always right.
Right, makes sense. Yeah, so I guess another spanner thrown into works.
Definitely, yeah, definitely.
So cool. So theme 5, dentists don't use portals, full stop. We've tried, they don't. This is very much from our first product experience, and obviously we've spoken to a lot of different software companies, and they're all saying kind of the same thing. So we've tried to push dentists down the portal route. It just doesn't work. They don't use portals because it's another password to remember, it's another username to remember. And I think one of the things that we heard also was, even with aligner cases that's worth about 3,000 or 4,000 pounds per order, around 50% of dentists will still not log into a portal to approve a design. They use a WhatsApp screenshot instead.
Yeah. Again, oh wow, yes, it's so typical, so typical. And again, you can't argue with it really. The busy people working in clinic back to back usually, depending on where they're at. If it's their own practice, it might be slightly different. Whereas if they're in a corporate or a DSO, they'll have their own portals and ways of logging in and so on. So trying to get someone to use an additional thing, it just adds inefficiencies to their day, and that's when they get to feel a bit of a pinch that we get having all these different platforms. That's when they go and push back a little bit. So I get it. I totally get it, but it's a difficult one because you and certainly early on, you know this, when we were working with Smart Genius for the clear aligner portal, you're trying to build something that makes dentist life easier and the way we can communicate much better and slicker. But it is just another thing for them to have to deal with, and it's not
Yeah,
well received.
absolutely. And I think, like everything, there was a spectrum to this as well, where
Mm-hmm.
a few of these dentists just like took it to almost like, you're taking fish to water kind of a thing, which is, they were very natural. They knew exactly what they had to do. And these were probably the kind of dentists that were doing higher volume of cases. And they knew that this was WhatsApp was a big bottleneck for them. They wanted case context, they wanted case history. And
Yep.
they said, this is perfect. This is going to solve all my issues. So, where the other spectrum, what the observation was for the other side of the spectrum was the fact that, there could be a dentist who's not doing a lot of clear aligner cases in a given year. They're probably somebody who's just like learned how to do one, and they're probably doing one every 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah.
And so it was these kind of dentists that we had a tough time with. And I'm sure your admin team can kind of explain what they did, but we did like have workarounds and try to make sure that if you're not using the system, we're still able to like process these cases on behalf of you, so that when you build up a few things, you're able to come back into the system and have a look.
Yeah, we've had it where, in so much as dentists who's, I'm not going to say names, but a very high profile dentist works at multiple practices, and just, I think the words are, cannot be asked to, I can't be bothered to log in to something else. So please, can you do a screen recording of the case, of the teeth moving, where they're going to be, and WhatsApp me that video. How many more processes do we have to go through to do that? Screen capture, crop it all, and upload it via WhatsApp. If one of the technicians working out, they don't want to send it from their personal number, so it has to go through the WhatsApp business. Yeah, but you try and do your best.
Yeah, and yeah, retention is everything for us, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So
I like the picture.
that's me when I'm looking at those 1,000 calls. So
Absolutely, yeah.
if it's a Friday, you're basically screwed. Time is not the same on both sides of the impression. So I think
Yeah.
if it's on a Friday, then you're basically screwed because nothing's going to happen over the weekend. And I think it's more to do with the math, where it's more like math is not mathing, which is
Yeah.
somebody sends it to you on a Friday saying, hey, your general turnaround time is actually 3 days. And the 3 days is on the Monday the following week. And then, what happens is they've not probably calculated business days, which is what your
Yeah.
SLA says. But I think that's slightly separate to what you see in the timeline here, which is Friday 4 p.m. Lab receives the case. Monday morning, dentist sees the email because, they're being chased for the shade. Monday lunchtime, shade's being sent through. Monday afternoon, lab starts work, which means dentist has lost, a couple of days between this.
Yeah, that is so typical. That is so typical. And again, it's the good thing with digital is, depending on the system, obviously, sometimes you receive it quite quickly. Other times it might come through in a batch. There are certain, I don't know if it's the same now, but there were certain scanners would you get them all in a batch from different places at one time. So that would be quite typical. I don't know if that's situation's changed now for all of them, but yeah, we're in a society now where patients, particularly as well, want everything today or yesterday to some degree. So that timeline there is a very good example of where we are at. Dentist going clinic. So it's typical that they're busy coming in Monday morning after a busy weekend. Get to lunchtime, quickly grab a snack, a bite to eat. Might sit down on a laptop or read some emails, look at the phone. I've got to reply to this. Well, I get on to replying to it until Monday evening sometimes, and then it's just eroded that time. And then it's typically the lab that has to swallow up that shortfall in time. Yeah, very common. Very common.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that we've also looked at while digitizing the communication side of things, like we spoke previously, was that can we assess what the information is coming through the case, and can we highlight front and center to the lab that you just got this case coming through, this is exactly what's missing, just go straight back to the dentist and have that chat. Because what it requires in today's world is that the technician has to go through, or the admin who's probably doing that has to probably go through the case, and then they're probably emailing, or they're probably calling probably an hour later or something after they've received the case. So that time is being crunched to a few seconds now, and that's something that we've been we're very proud about it, and we're also like we're also like sure it saves a lot of time, because you're not just talking about one case, you're talking about every single case that comes through the system.
Yeah, that's a game changer, really is, because that's and that there's a massive cost to that. Not only in technician might have to stay behind to do overtime, you're paying someone to do overtime, you might even be paying them extra time and a half or double time to stay behind and do it. But also typically it means then you have to send something via next day courier, or even same day courier. You get an Uber or something to take the job somewhere, because the time's been crunched that much that you can't let the patient down. Patients come in the chair, and that time's costly. So you want to do that, and we're generally good people. We want to see patients get the places on time. So yeah, there's a real cost to that.
Makes sense. 7. So labs are tracking which dentists cause problems. You might be on a list. So there's a very technical lab that we spoke to who are saying we track the most common issues that we can identify which surgeons need additional onboarding. We seem to be asking the most questions about the most questions about design. You can see who the prime culprits are and go back and retrain them. The second one was 100% of the scans have at least some quality issue. We almost never send them back, purely because, like you said, the patient's time is expensive. It's a huge opportunity that gets missed on the dentist side if you do get to send scans back. So dentists can't stand anything coming back. We just work around it. Very contrasting, but two different examples, and it just boggles my mind that you're sending us an incorrect scan and you're expecting the lab to work through it. Obviously, Matt, you're a technician by trade, so how do you fill those gaps in terms of the scan isn't being done right?
I think it's an age-old problem, and when we think back to analog times when you'd receive an impression through the post and trying at all costs to avoid getting the patient back in. It's a similar thing. Now, the beauty of having a scanner on screen is it's there, you can see it, right? So double check it, because it's the same thing. You're going to click send it, patient's going to have gone. You're still going to get patient back in. I totally get it. We have to fix so many. I remember a really big client of ours, and that's a really good point. The tracking. They knew that they were important to us, and they played on that quite a lot. We used to have issues with all their scans. They came from a certain scanner type. I won't say which, but they came from a certain scanner type, and because they were doing things so quickly, they had nurses doing the impressions for retainers essentially, and they were trying to get things through so quick. They'd send it off to us, and one of our technicians actually added up the time it took him to fix the scans when they came through, because they were coming through, open file, open mesh format as well. At the time, there was such a big issue with trying to sort all that out. It was something like, adding 2 or 3 hours to his day to receive their impressions. We're like, do you know what? If we lose that client, it's no big deal, because it's costing us. And so we had to have some serious conversations about how you have to improve what's coming through. I totally get that. And the next one, 100% of scans have some issues. Sorry, that's kind of covers that one. But if the first one about the additional onboarding, again, yeah. I think it's getting better. I think the more dentists are used to using different systems, it's getting better. But yeah, it's not an easy task sometimes. Yeah, I totally empathise with that.
And if I may just, dig a little deeper into this fact, right? So you did say that the technicians spent about 2 or 3 hours in terms of investigations and like trying to work around those scans. So is that something labs actively monitor, or is that something that's taken for granted and they just feel that it's a part of their job? Because I know in relative terms, you're obviously S4S was a massive, it's still a massive lab, and you tend to look at efficiencies quite a lot, being the size that you are. But is that something that generally gets floated even towards the SMB side?
Yeah, I think it would typically just you just accept it as part of, it's kind of, that's how it is, unless you get to a point where that client has caused some significant problems, and then I think then someone starts looking, going, do you know what, this is not good, and then it becomes an education thing. Is there anything we can do to make that dentist send things that are more accurate, or is there a better way of communicating things across? And it might be a bit of a training exercise. I've been involved in that, where it has been a phone call and, can we come and see you? We think we can resolve this. It should be pretty straightforward. We need this extra information. So yeah, but typically I think it does get just absorbed. I think most labs will just absorb it, and particularly ones where they're at the coalface, where the technician's doing pretty much everything, and there might be 2 or 3 technicians there. They're kind of just too busy, almost too busy to have to deal with it. Just crack on and do it. It's just been a bad day, and they absorb it time and time again.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, it is quite a thing. And have you had any structured way of understanding what dentists are causing you more time? Or was this very much like, it's almost like looking at the elephants of, who's, always submitting the wrong things, and it just sits in your mind. You're very sure that next time a scan comes through, it's from this dentist. I have a feeling that, the scan could probably not be that great. So yeah, has it almost been that mental model, or have you actually put a system to kind of track all these things?
I'll be honest with you now, having a digital team, if you like, who handle it all, I wouldn't know exactly what the process is, but certainly early on, when we were receiving a lot less cases, and certainly digital, it would be pretty much a mental thing to go, do you know what, this person's causing a bit of hassle. We need to have a chat to see if there's anything they can do better. Or typically one of the difficult ones, and inevitably we got blamed at first until you start drilling down, is the associate comes in, logs into someone else's system, sends a case, he gets booked in on that dentist who owns the scanner, he gets booked in on their case, and it just goes off through the ether. As let's say Dr. Smith sends it, but it's Dr. Jones who owns the scanner.
Yeah.
The case gets booked in, and it gets sent to Dr. Jones's practice, and this has happened,
Yeah,
and I suspect it probably still does as well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And ultimately, who's to blame? Often it's the lab, but we're just not to know, because it's just come through that process. But yeah, ultimately it falls on our shoulders again. Typically it's like, where's this lab work? And sometimes it's not easy to put the pieces together until you do a kind of bit of a crime scene investigation, when something finally comes back and you go, we know what happened. You've been logging in on their system. And we've had that, where that happened a few times, and dentist starts getting a bit irate, and it's like, this is your problem. But we've figured out what it is. Yeah. So that can be very frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very common stuff that I've heard as well. So with you on that. So theme 8, the software that was supposed to fix this. Spoiler, it did.
Spoiler.
Very classic one. So we tried it for 3 months. The integrations didn't reduce the workload the way we expected. We were still manually checking everything. In the end, we just hired someone to do that instead, and they probably canned the software. The scanner integration doesn't look as clean. You can send all the emails out of it, but you can't receive them back in. So this is probably talking about a certain solution that they've tried. So it's
Yep.
half a solution. Full communication features, that's between £5,000 and £7,000 a month. They don't want to be the open API. They want to own everything. Wow. Okay. So a lot of, like, I'd say,
Yeah.
walls that I'm seeing here in terms of what they want to do and what they don't want to do. Some being not so mature in terms of what they're trying to do. Some being mature, but they're probably charging you an obnoxious amount of money.
Again, yeah, three very typical responses there. I think we're still there, right? This is still happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very, very common. Yeah.
Very 2026.
Yeah, absolutely. And we saw that again in the room in Birmingham when we had that meeting. That we're all trying different things. It was great to be in that room because we had 30 odd people there who shared these common issues. It's clearly still a problem and still needs fixing. Obviously, I can't say as to which systems these guys are referring to, but yeah, that's really common. And unfortunately, you do get all those promises as well. You get these promises from the companies come in and they chat to you and go, yeah, this is going to be headache solved, all good, but only solves a very small percentage of things. Yeah. Yeah, very problem.
Yeah, every software is built different. Every software has its own agenda, very similar to how every labs are. And I guess it's the side effects of working in the industry.
Yeah, I suppose that the analog analogy to this is probably like, I don't know, you got difference between a delivery driver and collection. You've got your own driver and it goes and collects, or you've got a courier that picks up, or then you've got Royal Mail, and those things aren't the same thing. And when it comes to the lab, it's got to be dealt with differently. And I suppose that's the analog way of looking at it. This is, if we get digital in, but it's coming from multiple different ways, and the software just, we get sold this dream, and it's just not quite there yet.
Cool. Okay. So the next theme then is the switching inertia problem. Yeah, probably something that you've seen this through and through with S4S. We've been using this for 4 years. It would have been really easy if the process of switching was easy. So this is coming from a lab where the lab is saying the lab team fully understands and works with the current system. Switching would be no small thing. We'd need strong conviction. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah.
We use lab management software. We looked at an LMS but couldn't see the value at our size.
Yeah. I can see both of them. So I wrote an article called Perfection Paralysis a few years ago, and I think I reposted it recently. Yeah.
I saw that. Yeah.
Because we were in a position where I'd like to say we're kind of early adopters of things, and we were in a position where we were growing quite rapidly, and it never felt like a good time to move across to a lab management system, because the ones we were looking at never were quite doing what we wanted them to do. So we were doing this thing where we were constantly, well, we need to add this to it, we need to add that to it, we need to add this, and as we're doing that, we're slowing the pace down. The sales are going up, and the client numbers are going up, and the case numbers are going up, and the technicians right into the mix are going up, and the admin people are going up, and that adds a whole new level of complexity then, because if we'd have done it 7 years ago and accepted that you might have to grow with us, I'm not saying that was the right thing to do at the time, because I don't think the systems at the time were that good anyway, so I'm not saying it was we probably did the right thing roughly, but we were trying to perfect something that it paralyzed us for a while, and then suddenly you go, well, we just have to switch it, and that week of switching from a accounting system using Excel and everything else on the back of it to a proper lab management system, it caused a lot of work, a lot of hard work. So when I hear that comment, we don't really use a lab management system because we're not there yet. Oh, believe me, it's a lot easier to do when you've got 20 or 30 cases than it is when you've got 300 cases. A lot easier.
Yeah.
I would say anyone listening to this, if you're starting out, or you're at a position where you're just having a few cases a day, now's the time to do it. Now's the time to get your systems started, because you might think it's very elaborate, or you might be a bit too OTT at the minute, but trust me, as you grow, it will make your life so much easier than it would do if you decide to do it a few years down the line when you are really churning numbers out. So I get that one totally, yeah.
10%.
So yeah.
And I think one of the things that even companies who are typically vendors, right, for labs here, need to probably make it a lot more easier for them to make the switch, because change management is a difficult thing. I think we all understand that. And
Yep.
I think there's a huge difference even in terms of how companies handle it from their side. Like, yeah, they'd give you like an onboarding session, and then they can help you a little bit over the back end, but they do charge you money for it. And then what I feel is, especially having worked in this industry for 10 plus years, is the fact that that level of care is not taken care of, where people put themselves in the customer's shoe who's going through that change management, and then saying that, what, I'll go all in, I'll help you out with whatever you need to do to make this a really successful switch. Because I think even from a software company perspective, when the switch happens and the adoption shoots up, that's when the more you're more likely to retain that customer and not churn them out. And I just feel that change management as a whole subject is it probably two sides of the same coin, where on the first side of the coin, it is the lab that has to make that decision and has to like jump into it, but then the software company also has to enable and support that process really well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's I'm not going to tar everyone with the same brush, but I think on the whole, us lab technicians, we don't like change. think I think there are some that are exceptions to the rule. I think perhaps the younger ones coming through might be more accepting of change and more in tune with new systems and so on. I'm a little bit of an exception to the rule because I love change, but on the whole, I know as a profession, we like stability. We like to know where we are. Certainly from material side of things and so on. But yeah, change management is a big issue, particularly when you've got a lot of people. They're in there, and as I mentioned it earlier on, we structured our lab very much where we got admin people doing admin stuff, and we got technicians doing what they're really good at, technician stuff. So they're there, they're working on the cases day in, day out, and to get them to have to move to a different system, and a lot of these systems now are pretty complex and really, well, in a really good way, because there's a lot of information there, but getting them to learn a new system completely it definitely needs the software company to make that transition much smoother.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also just general human, I guess, tendency, right? That people don't like to change. People want to have the same routine, the same stuff going on as much as possible. I think it's only a few people, who like change. Like, like you said yourself, you'd put probably yourself in that category. And same with me. I like to try new things out, and I want to see, can that actually benefit my existing, could be a work related workflow, or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going into the last theme now, which is
Mm-hmm.
what happens to my data when I retire, which is a very
I'm not bothered. I'm going. I've gone. No, it's a really fair point. It's a really fair point.
So the day I come to retirement and stop working, we still need to keep up the prescriptions for 10 years. What happens to those records? We're not planning for today. We're planning for where we're going to be.
Yeah, I laugh about that. I don't care. I'm retiring, but there is a trend, unfortunately, in this industry where labs, there's no succession planning. So the labs, when they retire, the technicians, when they retire, they close the doors, put the lab down, and that's it. But they've got a duty of care, and they've got and wise, they have to keep them records. So how much easier would it be to keep them on a hard drive? or in the cloud, for that matter? I'm a bit old school with that, but yeah, hard drive, cloud, whatever, than it is to keep boxes and boxes and boxes in your garage, in your outbuilding, as we spoke earlier on. Typically there's a lot of labs, big mix, but there's a lot of labs still that are operating from a converted garage, or they've got a building in the garden at home. Do you really want to keep the files for 10 years? Because it's a heck of a responsibility. You want to retire and enjoy being overseas and enjoying some sunshine and sangria, not worried about prescription forms and invoices. Absolutely, yeah.
Driving somewhere. I think, absolutely. I think for whatever you need to do to meet regulation standards, you definitely have to do. But I was pretty surprised because I was on this call when this was asked, and I was like, okay, fair enough that you're like trying to, you're planning for your retirement because it's happening in the next 5 years. So I answered in terms of what we do, how we take care of, our clients in terms of HIPAA and GDPR compliance, in terms of data retention and stuff like that. So it was a very casual, good conversation. The client was very confident about it at the end of it. But then what surprised me was actually the second quote where, there's this lab that we were speaking with who said, we want to make sure that, we plan for the future, which could be like 30 or 20 years down the line. And this person was actually probably planning for succession and, scaling this to a massive extent, right? And so, like you said, I think one of the other factors that probably chimes into this whole topic is also that the average technician age within the UK is not a young population anymore. It's actually an aged population.
Yeah, it's mid-50s, I think. 50, I can't remember if it's 50.
Isn't it? Before retirement has to happen.
Yeah. Well, for me, I'm trying to get there.
I thought you're already there.
I'm trying my best. People still keep employing me, unfortunately.
Not let you go.
But, no, that's it.
Yeah, so this is absolutely fair, and I think this is something that I thought is a slightly funny take, but also a serious thing in a certain way, because if you have that person to deal with that, then
it really is. And I'm guessing you probably you're aware that we're now with HMRC, we're making tax digital, which is going to add another whole lot more paperwork, but more admin work for certainly for the smaller labs where they're sole traders and they have to start submitting quarterly accounts, whereas it used to be every year if you're a sole trader. But so that might be something that also is an issue for technicians. Certainly the smaller labs where they are sole traders. But yeah, it's a really fair point. We've got GDC regs to look after. Yeah, when we retire, we're going to come off the register. But we've still got HMRC that if they want to look at your accounts, they want them keeping. I think that HMRC is 7 years, I believe. But for medical legal records, 10 years. In fact, I think there is even some legislation that says indefinitely.
Indefinitely? Wow.
Okay. Indefinitely. So there used to be this thing where when GDPR first came to fruition, I think the term is it keep it for as a reasonable amount of time as possible, whereas I think it might be CQC. We should check this actually because it's quite a good stat. One of them says indefinitely. That might be the GDC that said that. We want you to keep files indefinitely, but for GDPR purposes, they want to keep it only for the reasonable amount of time that you need to keep them. So, and I think that is deemed as 10 years from a medical legal perspective. But we should check that, because that would be quite a good stat to work on.
Yeah, something to take away then from
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So this was, everything that we had from those 1,000+ calls in terms of
Wow.
conversations. I hope,
Yeah.
Matt, you got to see something that you hadn't before. But I'm sure that with the amount of time you spent in the lab, you probably have gone through everything day in day out.
No, they are so typical, so typical. But I think because there are that many moving parts, sometimes you forget. I might speak to you about something and about 2 or 3 different subjects, but there's still another 30 to deal with. It's just because there are so many moving parts, and that's where when we had that meeting in Birmingham, that was just great, because someone throws up an issue they've had, or solutions they've resolved. Yeah, we have that same problem, and then it just sparked off so much chat about yeah, it's great, really, really great. And yeah, some of these, I think all of them are familiar, really familiar. I don't think there's one there that's come up and gone, no, that's not us. Yeah, every single one of them, definitely, yeah.
Makes sense. No, absolutely makes sense. I think, I'm obviously, by after doing so many of these calls, some of this, has also been done by my team. So, but it's just coming out of it, I learned a great deal about, what's really going on. And yeah, I think a lot of the things that we are trying to do from a direction standpoint, and also from a, servicing standpoint back to the labs as a software company, really, I think we're on the right track.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go for it.
What common thing are you sick of hearing about now? You must go, oh no, not again.
Probably the most common thing is, I'd say it's definitely the WhatsApp follow-ups. Because the most common thing that I've heard is that, hey, we share designs, or we ask for this missing information, and sometimes we don't know if it's on the email, or we don't know if it's on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Especially during summer, right? Because these last 2 months, while you're entering summer and stuff like that, people have been like away on holidays and stuff.
Yeah.
So for some reason, I've heard more in calls that the other person was actually away on, for a break for 2 weeks, and I didn't know like where to pick up. And where to pick up is actually a massive thing, because you have like 4-5 different portals through which you're using it for communication. So you have to go and check every single portal and like make sense of, like, a mind map sense of what's going on. Obviously, we're trying to record all of that on a lab management system. But again, it's only like a note that I would write that I would probably understand, not somebody else sitting next to me, right? So yeah, I think that's something that I've very commonly heard, and I was like, yeah, not again.
Yeah.
Like, I've heard this before.
Interesting. So I was away quite recently, and WhatsApp, for some reason, I don't know what happened, but it kind of froze. I'm guessing it's because I've gone into roaming or something like that. Everything else seemed to be working, but I just thought, well, that's a bit odd. I've not had any WhatsApp messages for a few hours. Open WhatsApp, and yeah, it seems to be all right, and it seems to be sending messages. It wasn't until I turned my phone off and on again.
Yeah, it's happened to me. Yeah.
Ping, 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 messages. Yeah, I don't know, really spotted that. I'm on my phone a lot, so. But had it been, or maybe even had it been a work phone, and you go, well, I'm off on holiday, so that's, you'll come away with me, and I'll only need it if I use it if I need to. But not knowing that for a week or two, wow, that would have caused problems, right?
Yeah, I know, absolutely. And I think that does happen, like and it's happened a few times actually, not just for me, for a lot of people I know, where WhatsApp is just suddenly froze, you're not getting messages, and you don't even know it's frozen, like you said, right? But what I've seen, another observation, is that a lot of the SMB or the smaller size labs tend to use their own personal WhatsApp numbers and not a WhatsApp for business numbers. Which means that they might probably realize this sooner than you think, because they're all also texting family and friends, and they're like, something's wrong, like, with WhatsApp. But you'd be surprised, Matt, like, a couple of labs that we already work with, and a couple of labs that we have spoken to as well, who want to work with us, have very been explicitly saying that I use WhatsApp for friends, family, dentists, invoicing, dentist issues, and so on. And I'm like, how do you have the mental bandwidth to go into the same application where you're hearing frustrations from a lot of people, and then you're also seeing, picture of like your grandson or your like son,
Yeah.
and then, be cheerful about it. Like, it becomes like a dreadful place at some point.
Mine is the most random. WhatsApp is unbelievable. Yeah, and I've had to mute quite a few because I'm in car groups. I'm in lab groups. I'm in dentist groups. I'm in small genius group
Thankfully, we don't spam
and
you at work.
multiple family groups. Yeah, so it is. You got to make sure sometimes you're going to send the right person the right message, right?
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, no, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for
Fantastic.
doing this podcast today. We'll speak soon then. Cheers.
Fantastic. Apologies for the background. Our office is almost finished, so I've had to be. I've been in a temporary son's bedroom with me because this is where the best Wi-Fi is at the minute.
I actually had to come to my friend's place today because my broadband at my home
Yeah,
for 2 weeks. This is actually my friend's room that I'm sitting in right now.
we made it work.
Yeah, that's I think.